Confidential.
Confidential.
A confidential government report.
Doctors are required to keep patients' records completely confidential.
The information will be regarded as strictly confidential.
His voice sank into a confidential whisper.
Confidentiality.
Confidentiality.
The relationship between attorney and client is based on confidentiality. It's a breach of confidentiality for a priest to reveal what someone has said in the confessional.
Confiding.
Confiding.
Her tone was suddenly confiding.
He leant forward confidingly.
Configuration.
Configuration.
The configuration of pistons in an engine. Configure.
Configure.
Confine.
Confine.
The police cadet's duties were confined to taking statements from the crowd.
We confined our study to 10 cases.
Owen did not confine himself to writing only one type of poem.
Any soldier who leaves his post will be confined to barracks.
He was allegedly confined in a narrow dark room for 2 months.
Firefighters managed to confine the fire to the living room.
Vaughan is confined to a wheelchair.
She's confined to bed with flu.
Confined. The risk of infection is confined to medical personnel.
It wasn't easy to sleep in such a confined space.
Confinement.
Confinement.
They were held in confinement for 3 weeks.
He visited prisoners at their place of confinement.
The pros and cons of home versus hospital confinement.
Confines.
Confines.
Within the confines of the prison.
Confirm.
Confirm.
New evidence has confirmed the first witness's story.
To confirm my diagnosis, I need to do some tests.
Research has confirmed that the risk is higher for women.
The new results confirm what most of us knew already.
The president refused to confirm the rumor.
Managers have so far refused to confirm or deny reports that up to 200 jobs are to go.
Walsh confirmed that the money had been paid. My brother will confirm what I've told you.
Could you confirm the dates we discussed?
Smith was confirmed as the club's new manager yesterday.
I am writing to confirm a booking for a single room for the night of 6th of June.
This just confirms my worst fears.
The expression on his face confirmed me in my suspicions.
Confirmation.
Confirmation.
There has still been no official confirmation of the report.
Verbal confirmation that payment has been made.
Most hotels require confirmation from a prospective guest in writing.
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Confiscate.
Confiscate.
Miss Williams confiscated all our sweets.
Many opposition supporters had their goods confiscated.
The confiscation of pornographic material.
Conflagration.
Conflagration.
Conflate.
Conflate.
He conflates 2 images from Kipling's short stories in the film.
Conflict.
Conflict.
Conflicts over wage settlements.
The conflict between tradition and innovation. Normal kids who are in conflict with their parents.
Social and political conflict in the 1930s.
The threat of industrial conflict in the coalfields.
Marx points out the potential conflicts below the surface of society.
His views on the literal truth of the Bible brought him into conflict with other Christian leaders.
Doctors exercise considerable power and often come into conflict with politicians.
A lawyer specializing in conflict resolution.
For years, the region has been torn apart by armed conflicts.
UN troops intervened to avert a threat of violent conflict.
Efforts to resolve the conflict.
As women increasingly went out to work, the possibility of a conflict of loyalties became stronger. A conflict between the demands of one's work and one's family.
The principles of democracy are sometimes in conflict with political reality.
A state of inner conflict.
I've got a conflict on Friday. Can we make it Monday?
There is a growing conflict of interest between her position as a politician and her business activities.
New evidence which conflicts with previous findings.
Conflicted.
Conflicted.
Many mothers today feel conflicted about working outside the home.
Conflict-free.
Conflict-free.
Conflicting.
Conflicting.
It can be difficult to balance the conflicting demands on our time. The scientific advice is conflicting.
Confluence.
Confluence.
A confluence of unhappy events. Conform.
Conform.
The pressure on school children to conform.
People who do not conform to traditional standards of behaviour.
Students can be expelled for refusing to conform to school rules. Students can be expelled for refusing to conform to school rules.
All new buildings must conform with the Regional Development Plan. Products which conform to international safety standards.
Joseph does not conform to the stereotype of a policeman.
Confirmation.
Confirmation.
The conformation of the earth.
Conformist.
Conformist.
A country with a conformist education system.
Conformity.
Conformity.
An emphasis on conformity and control.
Conformity to social expectations.
We must act in conformity with local regulations.
Confound.
Confound.
His amazing recovery confounded the medical specialists.
United's new striker confounded the critics with his third goal in as many games. United's new striker confounded the critics with his third goal in as many games.
Her question completely confounded me.
Confounded.
Confounded.
That confounded dog has run away again.
Confront.
Confront.
The problems confronting the new government were enormous.
Customers are confronted with a bewildering amount of choice. Customers are confronted with a bewildering amount of choice.
We try to help people confront their problems.
Troops were confronted by an angry mob.
I confronted him with my suspicions, and he admitted everything.
I haven't confronted her about it yet.
Confrontation.
Confrontation.
She had stayed in her room to avoid another confrontation.
An ideological confrontation between conservatives and liberals.
Japan seemed unlikely to risk military confrontation with Russia.
Confrontational.
Confrontational.
A confrontational style of management.
Confuse.
Confuse.
I understand the text, but the diagrams are confusing me.
People might well confuse the two products.
I always confuse you with your sister. You look so alike.
Donald Reagan, not to be confused with former President Ronald Reagan.
He kept asking unnecessary questions which only confused the issue.
Confused.
Confused.
I'm totally confused. Could you explain that again?
If you're confused about anything, phone me. All the roads looked the same, and he felt thoroughly confused.
Witness statements presented a confused picture of the incident. A lot of confused ideas.
Confusing.
Confusing.
The instructions were really confusing.
It was a very confusing situation.
Confusion.
Confusion.
There was some confusion as to whether we had won or lost.
The diversion led to considerable confusion.
To avoid confusion, the teams wore different colours. There is a confusion in the public mind between psychology and psychiatry.
His confusion at meeting her there was quite apparent.
Matt stared at her in confusion. A scene of indescribable confusion.
There was a confusion of shouts and orders as the ship prepared to depart.
Confute.
Confute.
Galileo was able to confute the argument that the sun moved around the earth. He held a press conference to confute accusations that he had supported the riots. The evidence, however, confutes these claims. The government announced that their critics had been confuted.
Conga.
Conga.
Congeal.
Congeal.
The fat had slowly congealed in the pan.
Congenial.
Congenial.
The department provides a congenial atmosphere for research.
Frank was a very congenial colleague.
The summers out here are not congenial to the average North European.
Compost provides congenial conditions for roots to develop. Congenital.
Congenital.
Congenital abnormalities.
A congenital defect.
He's a congenital liar.
A congenital inability to make decisions.
Congreal.
Congreal.
Congested.
Congested.
Congested airspace.
London's roads are heavily congested.
Congestion.
Congestion. Councillors are looking at ways to reduce traffic congestion in the town centre.
Congestion charging.
Congestion charging.
Plans to introduce congestion charging were dropped until after the election.
Conglomerate.
Conglomerate.
An international conglomerate.
Conglomeration.
Conglomeration.
The loose conglomeration of artists known as l'École de Paris.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Congratulate.
Congratulate.
He never even stopped to congratulate me.
She congratulated me warmly on my exam results. All three are to be congratulated for doing so well.
I congratulated myself on my good fortune.
Congratulatory messages.
Congratulation.
Congratulation.
I've just passed my driving test. Congratulations.
Congratulations on a superb performance.
Give Oscar my congratulations.
Letters of congratulation. Congregate.
Congregate.
Crowds began to congregate to hear the president's speech.
Congregation.
Congregation.
The congregation knelt to pray.
Several members of the congregation are away.
Congregationalism.
Congregationalism.
Congress.
Congress.
The Congress of the ruling Labour Party. The president has lost the support of Congress.
Gandhi's Congress Party.
A congressional committee.
Congressman.
Congressman.
Congresswoman.
Congresswoman.
Congruent.
Congruent.
Conical.
Conical.
Huts with conical roofs.
Conifer.
Conifer.
Coniferous forests.
Conjecture.
Conjecture.
What she said was pure conjecture. There has been some conjecture about a possible merger.
My results show that this conjecture was, in fact, correct. It seems reasonable to conjecture that these conditions breed violence.
Conjoin.
Conjoin.
Conjoined twins.
Conjoined twins.
Conjugal.
Conjugal.
Conjugal love.
Conjugate.
Conjugate.
The verb to go conjugates irregularly.
Conjugation.
Conjugation.
Conjunction.
Conjunction.
The worksheets are designed to be used in conjunction with the new course books.
A happy conjunction of events.
Conjunctivitis.
Conjunctivitis.
Conjuncture.
Conjuncture.
The historic conjuncture from which Marxism arose.
Conjure.
Conjure.
The magician conjured a rabbit out of his hat.
He has conjured victories from worse situations than this. He has conjured victories from worse situations than this.
Dieting always seems to conjure up images of endless salads.
Somehow we have to conjure up another $10,000.
Conjurer.
Conjurer.
Conjuring.
Conjuring. He did conjuring tricks for the children.
Conk.
Conk.
Our car conked out on the way home.
I got home from work and I just conked out on the sofa.
Conquer.
Conquer.
Conman.
Conman.
Connect.
Connect.
The railway link would connect Felixstowe with Fishguard. Connect the speakers to the CD player.
We'd like 2 rooms with connecting doors.
I didn't connect the two events in my mind. There is no evidence to connect them with the attack.
Click here to connect to the internet.
Has the phone been connected yet? The power supply should be connected by a qualified electrician.
I missed the connecting flight.
This train connects with the one to Glasgow.
From Toronto, you can connect to all other Air Canada destinations.
Please hold the line. I'm trying to connect you. He swung at the ball but didn't connect.
They valued her ability to empathize and connect with others.
Is the washing machine connected up yet?
The autopilot can be connected up with the flight recorder.
Connected.
Connected.
The light is connected to a timer.
A computer connected to the internet.
A series of artificial lakes connected by waterfalls.
Problems connected with drug abuse. Everyone connected with the film industry.
Mr. Edelson was closely connected with Trinity College.
Connectedness.
Connectedness.
Human beings have a need for both independence and connectedness.
Computers have increased the connectedness between physicians and patients.
Connection.
Connection.
The causal connection between smoking and cancer.
There is a connection between pollution and the death of trees.
Mr. O'Hara had no known connection with terrorist activity.
Williams apparently has no connection to the case.
Police have so far failed to establish a connection between the two murders. The evidence was there in the file, but no one made the connection. Students often see little connection between school and the rest of their lives. He demonstrated the close connection between social conditions and health.
A digital telephone connection via satellite.
They're offering free internet connection.
The socket allows connection to a PC. There's a £25 connection charge.
2 men have been arrested in connection with the attack.
Visits made to Spain in connection with her business.
His work in connection with refugees.
An electrical connection.
There's a loose connection.
If this train gets delayed, we'll miss our connection to Paris.
Cheshunt has good rail connections to London.
Connections in high places.
We have good connections in the advertising industry.
He is English but has Irish connections.
The network of family connections in Italy.
Connective.
Connective.
Connective tissue.
Connective tissue.
Connectivity.
Connectivity.
A growing demand for high-speed connectivity.
Internet connectivity software.
Connector.
Connector.
Connection.
Connection.
Conning tower.
Conning tower.
Conniption.
Conniption.
My mother threw a conniption fit when I didn't come home till 2 in the morning.
Connive.
Connive.
He would not be the first politician to connive at a shady business deal. He would not be the first politician to connive at a shady business deal.
They connived with their mother to deceive me.
We could not have escaped without the connivance of the guards.
Conniving.
Conniving.
Connoisseur.
Connoisseur.
A wine connoisseur.
Fry was a connoisseur of Renaissance art.
Connotation.
Connotation.
The word professional has connotations of skill and excellence.
A negative connotation. Connote.
Connote.
The word plump connotes cheerfulness.
Connubial.
Connubial.
Living in connubial bliss.
Conquer.
Conquer.
The Normans conquered England in 1066.
Egypt was conquered by the Persian king Cambyses.
The Zulus conquered all the neighbouring tribes.
She was determined to conquer her fear of flying. Efforts to conquer inflation.
Drugs to conquer the disease.
An attempt to conquer the peaks of Everest.
In the last few years, the company has succeeded in conquering the European market.
Conquering heroes.
Conquest.
Conquest.
The Norman Conquest.
The Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire.
French conquests in Asia.
He boasts about his many conquests.
The conquest of space.
Conquistador.
Conquistador.
Consanguinity.
Consanguinity.
Conscience.
Conscience.
It was his guilty conscience that made him offer to help.
Well, at least I can face them all with a clear conscience.
I can't tell you what to do. It's a matter of conscience. A crisis of conscience among medical staff. Ian felt a pang of conscience at having misjudged her.
They've no conscience at all about cheating.
He didn't want somebody's death on his conscience.
Could you live with that on your conscience?
I couldn't in all conscience tell him that his job was safe. Conscience-stricken.
Conscience-stricken.
I hurried home, conscience-stricken at leaving mother alone.
Conscientious.
Conscientious.
A conscientious teacher may feel inclined to take work home.
A conscientious and hard-working student.
His conscientiousness and loyalty to the company.
Conscientious objector.
Conscientious objector.
Conscious.
Conscious.
I became conscious of someone watching me.
I was very conscious of the fact that I had to make a good impression.
She was conscious that Marie was listening to every word.
The driver was still conscious when the ambulance arrived.
Vivian had made a conscious effort to be friendly.
Environmentally conscious consumers.
Many employers are becoming more safety conscious.
She was very conscious of security.
The conscious mind.
Without conscious thought, she instinctively placed a hand on his arm. It affects the audience at a deeper, less conscious level.
Consciously.
Consciously.
She was probably not consciously aware of her true feelings.
I'm not consciously trying to flirt with people.
Consciousness.
Consciousness.
David lost consciousness at 8 o'clock and died a few hours later.
She could faintly hear voices as she began to regain consciousness.
The painful memories eventually faded from her consciousness.
Hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness.
Research into human consciousness.
The experience helped to change her political consciousness.
This will increase public consciousness of the pollution issue.
Consciousness raising.
Consciousness raising.
Conscript.
Conscript.
Young Frenchmen were conscripted into the army and forced to fight in Algeria.
A young army conscript. Conscription.
Conscription.
Consecrate.
Consecrate.
The bones will be reburied in consecrated ground. Consecutive.
Consecutive.
It had rained for 4 consecutive days.
Can they win the title for the 3rd consecutive season?
Number the pages consecutively.
Consensual.
Consensual.
A consensual style of management. Consensus.
Consensus.
A lack of consensus about the aims of the project.
There is a consensus among teachers that children should have a broad understanding of the world. The EU Council of Finance Ministers failed to reach a consensus on the pace of integration.
The current consensus of opinion. The general consensus was that technology was a good thing.
The consensus politics of the 50s.
Consent.
Consent.
He took the car without the owner's consent.
Her parents gave their consent to the marriage.
A patient can refuse consent for a particular treatment at any time. Most owners are happy to have their names used for publicity if this is done with their prior consent.
Informed consent was obtained from all participants before the study began.
The chairman was elected by common consent. Divorce by mutual consent.
Her father reluctantly consented to the marriage.
He rarely consents to do interviews.
Consenting adult.
Consenting adult.
Consequence.
Consequence.
Many believe that poverty is a direct consequence of overpopulation.
Our findings have far-reaching consequences for researchers.
He ate some poisonous mushrooms with fatal consequences.
Animals have died as a consequence of coming into contact with this chemical.
She was over the age limit, and in consequence, her application was rejected.
Your opinion is of little consequence to me.
I don't suppose it is of any consequence now. Consequent.
Consequent.
The rise in inflation and consequent fall in demand. Consequential.
Consequential.
Redundancy and the consequential loss of earnings. A consequential decision.
Consequently.
Consequently.
Most computer users have never received any formal keyboard training. Consequently, their keyboard skills are inefficient.
The molecules are absorbed into the bloodstream and consequently affect the organs. The molecules are absorbed into the bloodstream and consequently affect the organs.
Conservancy.
Conservancy.
The Thames Conservancy.
Conservation.
Conservation.
Wildlife conservation.
A local conservation group.
Conservation of the countryside.
Energy conservation.
The conservation of resources through recycling.
Conservation area.
Conservation area.
Conservationist.
Conservationist.
Conservatism.
Conservatism.
People's innate conservatism in matters of language.
Conservative.
Conservative.
A very conservative attitude to education.
Conservative views.
Conservative policies.
A Conservative MP.
A dark Conservative suit.
At a conservative estimate, the holiday will cost about £1,500.
A fortune conservatively estimated at $2 million.
He was conservatively dressed in a dark business suit. An argument between reformers and conservatives in the organisation.